The explosion throws you out of your bunk before you're fully awake. For one terrifying second, you think your battleship has collided with another vessel. Then the lights go out. Steel groans beneath your feet. Another explosion follows, closer this time. Pipes burst overhead, filling the passageway with steam. Somewhere in the darkness, men are shouting, but their voices are swallowed by the thunder outside. Then one sentence cuts through the chaos. "This is not a drill! We're under attack! Under attack? By who?" You force yourself toward the ladder leading to the upper deck. Every step grows hotter. The smell reaches you before the daylight does. Burning oil, smoke, cordite. You climb onto the deck and your world stops making sense. The harbor is on fire. Aircraft with bright red circles painted beneath their wings dive toward the ships anchored beside yours. Machine gun fire tears across the water. Bombs explode among battleships that only minutes ago had been resting peacefully beneath the Hawaiian sun. Sailors leap into the harbor as flames spread across the surface itself. Some disappear beneath the burning water. Others refuse to leave, fighting desperately to rescue the men trapped below deck. You grip the rail so tightly your hands begin to shake. Only moments ago, America was at peace. Within the next 2 hours, more than 2,400 Americans will be dead. Battleships will sink. Heroes will be born. And whether you survive or not, your life will never belong to the peaceful world you knew. But 12 hours earlier, Pearl Harbor looked like paradise. The evening sun reflected across the calm waters as sailors relaxed after another ordinary Saturday. Music drifted from the shore, small boats crossed the harbor, and the lights of Honolulu slowly awakened beneath the mountains. You are 20 years old, Seaman Second Class Daniel Carter. You joined the United States Navy 2 years ago, hoping to earn a steady paycheck, help your parents back in Sacramento, and see more of the world than railroad tracks and dusty California streets. Your father repairs locomotives. Your mother teaches school. Every Sunday, your younger sister Emily sends another letter reminding you that home feels strangely quiet without you. War already burns across Europe. Germany has conquered nation after nation. Japan continues expanding across Asia, yet Hawaii feels impossibly far from it all. Most sailors believe that if America is ever drawn into the conflict, it won't begin here. Certainly not at Pearl Harbor. Your closest friend aboard ship is Tommy Reynolds, a loud 21-year-old from Kansas who somehow manages to joke through every inspection, every drill, and every miserable meal served by the galley. "You know what this Navy's missing?" he asks while staring into another cup of weak coffee. "Better sailors? Hamburgers. You've said that every day. Because every day I'm right. Even Chief Petty Officer Frank Donovan struggles to hide a smile before ordering both of you back to work. Life aboard the battleship rarely changes. Morning inspections, maintenance, cleaning, weapons drills, letters from home. The Navy has an endless talent for finding jobs that nobody knew existed. That evening, you sit on the deck watching the sunset disappear beyond the Pacific. You finish another letter home. "Don't worry about me. Things are quiet here. I'll probably spend tomorrow playing baseball after church." You fold the letter carefully and place it inside your locker. It will never be mailed. Nearly 230 miles north of Oahu, 6 Japanese aircraft carriers slice silently through the Pacific. Across their crowded flight decks, pilots receive final instructions beneath dim red lights. Bombs are secured beneath wings. Torpedoes are loaded. Every pilot has memorized his target. Months of planning have led to this single morning. No radio messages are transmitted. Silence is part of the attack. Back in Pearl Harbor, everyone sleeps. Sunday arrives peacefully. The harbor wakes as it always has. Cooks prepare breakfast. Coffee fills the air. Signal flags hang almost motionless in the warm breeze. Some sailors prepare for church services. Others complain about weekend duty. A baseball game is planned for later that afternoon. Nothing about the morning feels unusual. At 7:48 a.m., the first wave of Japanese aircraft reaches Oahu. 7 minutes later, you hear engines. Nobody reacts immediately. Military aircraft fly over Pearl Harbor almost every day. Then someone looks upward. There are too many. The formation grows larger. They are flying lower than normal, faster. One sailor shades his eyes. Those aren't ours. The first bomb strikes before anyone can process what they're seeing. The explosion shakes the harbor with unbelievable force. A towering column of fire rises from Battleship Row. Windows shatter. Steel twists. Alarms erupt from every direction. Then machine gun bullets rip across crowded decks. The attack has begun. Officers scream for battle stations. Sailors race across steel decks, still wearing undershirts, some carrying boots instead of rifles. Training takes over. Fear follows close behind. You and Tommy sprint toward your anti-aircraft gun while explosions continue ripping across the harbor. Japanese torpedo bombers skim only a few meters above the water before releasing their weapons. Whitewakes race toward anchored battleships. One impact, then another. Massive ships begin listing almost immediately. Black smoke climbs into the blue Hawaiian sky. The anti-aircraft crew struggles to remove protective covers. Someone drops an ammunition crate. Another sailor cuts his hands, forcing open a jammed locker. Every second costs lives. Finally, the gun fires. The recoil slams through your shoulders as shells climb toward the attacking aircraft. One enemy plane catches fire and crashes into the harbor. Nobody celebrates. Another wave is already diving. Then, a blinding flash erupts across the water. The USS Arizona disappears inside an enormous fireball. Its forward magazine explodes with such violence that the entire harbor seems to shake. Thousands of tons of steel are hurled skyward. Burning debris rains across nearby ships. More than 1,000 sailors are trapped inside within seconds. Even the men firing anti-aircraft guns stop for a heartbeat. Nobody has ever seen destruction like this. Burning fuel spreads across the harbor. The sea itself catches fire. Sailors jump from sinking ships only to find flames waiting on the water below. Some swim through burning oil. Others scream for help. Chief Donovan grabs your shoulder. "Forget the planes!" He points toward the harbor. "We save our own now!" Without hesitation, you and Tommy race toward the rail. A young sailor struggles through the burning water, desperately reaching toward your ship. You throw him a line. He misses. You throw again. This time his fingers catch the rope. Together, you begin pulling with everything you have. Then another explosion rocks your battleship. The deck lurches violently. A voice echoes from somewhere below. "Danny!" You know that voice. Eddie Morales. Your compartment is directly beneath you. Smoke is pouring from the hatch. The lower decks are flooding. Tommy stares at you. You already know what he's thinking. If Eddie is still alive, someone has to go after him. Without saying another word, the two of you disappear into the smoke. Every breath burns your throat as you race down the ladder behind Tommy. Emergency lights flicker through the darkness while seawater rushes across the deck plates. Somewhere ahead, metal groans, as if the ship itself is crying out. "Eddie!" you shout. No answer. Then, a cough. You follow the sound to a twisted compartment where a collapsed beam has trapped Eddie Morales beneath it. Blood runs down the side of his face, but he's still conscious. "I thought, you two weren't coming," he whispers. "You talk too much to die today," Tommy says. The three of you strain against the beam. It refuses to move. Another explosion shakes the ship. Water pours through a ruptured bulkhead. Time is running out. Working together, you wedge a steel bar beneath the beam and push with everything you have. The metal finally shifts just enough for Eddie to pull himself free. The victory lasts only a moment. A sailor rushes toward you. "We have to abandon this compartment! Move!" The four of you fight your way back toward the upper deck just as another blast tears through the harbor. Behind you, the flooded passage disappears beneath boiling water and smoke. You never see that compartment again. Outside, Pearl Harbor has become a nightmare. The attack now comes from every direction. Japanese fighters sweep low over the harbor, spraying machine gun fire across ships, docks, and airfields. Dive bombers scream from the clouds while torpedo bombers race between the anchored battleships with terrifying precision. The air is filled with smoke, shattered steel, and the cries of wounded men. You help carry injured sailors toward a temporary aid station on the pier. Doctors and corpsmen work without stopping, turning warehouses and open pavement into emergency hospitals. There aren't enough stretchers. There aren't enough bandages. There isn't enough time. One young sailor grips your sleeve before the medics pull him away. "Tell my mother," he begins. He never finishes the sentence. You don't even learn his name. The attack continues for nearly 2 relentless hours. By the time the final Japanese aircraft disappear into the distance, the harbor no longer resembles the place you knew the evening before. Battleships burn from bow to stern. Some have rolled onto their sides. Others have settled into the shallow harbor floor. The USS Arizona is little more than a shattered inferno. Thick black smoke rises thousands of feet into the sky, visible for miles across Oahu. The silence that follows feels almost as frightening as the attack itself. Men wander through the wreckage, searching for friends. Some call names that will never be answered. Others sit alone, staring across the water without speaking. Only then does the full truth begin to spread. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't an isolated raid. It was a carefully planned surprise attack. America is now at war. Over 2,400 Americans have been killed, more than 1,000 of them aboard the Arizona alone. Hundreds more are wounded. Aircraft lie destroyed across nearby airfields. Much of the Pacific Fleet has been damaged or sunk. That night, Pearl Harbor never truly becomes dark. Ships continue burning. Rescue crews spend hours cutting through twisted steel, listening for voices trapped inside flooded compartments. Sometimes they hear tapping, sometimes they don't. You remain with the rescue teams until your hands bleed from pulling debris and hauling hoses. Every sailor you save feels like a miracle. Every sailor you cannot reach becomes another face you'll remember for the rest of your life. The next afternoon, the entire base gathers around radios. President Franklin D. Roosevelt addresses the nation. He calls December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The words spread across every ship, every military base, every home in America. The country that woke in peace now prepares for a global war. Within hours, Congress declares war on Japan. 3 days later, Germany and Italy declare war on the United States. The conflict that once seemed an ocean away has reached every American family. Weeks later, your parents finally receive a telegram. For 2 terrible days, they feared your name might appear among the dead. Instead, another letter arrives. This one is written with trembling hands. You tell them you're alive. You don't tell them about the screams, or the burning water, or the men you couldn't save. Some memories are too heavy to fit inside an envelope. Tommy survives the attack, though the scar across his forehead remains for the rest of his life. Eddie recovers slowly after weeks in the hospital. Chief Donovan returns to duty before his own wounds have fully healed, refusing to leave his crew while the Navy rebuilds. As for you, the boy who arrived in Hawaii hoping to see the world is gone. Pearl Harbor changed him forever. Training becomes harder. The fleet begins rebuilding. New sailors arrive almost every week, many inspired by the attack that shocked the nation. Some ask what Pearl Harbor was really like. You never know how to answer. How do you explain the smell of burning oil, or the sound of steel tearing apart, or how an ordinary Sunday morning became one of the darkest days in American history? Years later, when the war is finally over, people speak of victories across the Pacific. Midway, Guadalcanal, Leyte Gulf, Okinawa. They remember the triumphs that followed. But you remember where it began, not with speeches, not with headlines, with smoke filling a passageway, with Tommy pulling you back onto your feet, with Eddie calling your name through the darkness, and with young sailors diving into burning water to save men they had met only days before. History remembers Pearl Harbor as the attack that brought America into World War II. You remember it differently. You remember ordinary people who became extraordinary because they had no other choice. Sometimes courage isn't charging into battle. Sometimes it's throwing a rope to a stranger. Sometimes it's running back into a burning ship because your friend is still inside. And sometimes it's surviving a day that changes the world, then finding the strength to keep living afterward. Long after the harbor is rebuilt and new ships fill the waters once again, the USS Arizona remains where she sank, resting beneath the surface as a permanent memorial. Visitors come from around the world to honor those who never returned home. You stand there many years later, looking across the quiet water. The harbor is peaceful once more, almost exactly as it was on the evening before the attack. The difference is that now you understand how quickly peace can disappear, and how deeply the courage of ordinary people can endure.